There's a mystery buried beneath the northern soil, one that modern builders almost never talk about. It isn't a myth, and it isn't a legend. It's lost science, a science of warmth, perfected by the Vikings over 1,000 years ago. These were people who lived where the land itself seemed to reject life. Frozen coasts, endless wind, months of darkness. Yet somehow, they not only survived, they thrived. They built homes that stayed warm even when the air outside could freeze steel. And here's the shocking part. Their homes were so well insulated, so energy efficient, that later generations abandoned the design because they thought it was too primitive. They replaced it with stone, wood, and vanity, and lost one of the greatest survival technologies ever invented. This is the story of the earth-sheltered Viking home, a structure that defied the Arctic, vanished from history, and still outperforms many modern houses today. To understand why this design mattered, you have to imagine the Viking world. Their settlements stretched from coastal Norway to Iceland, Greenland, and even parts of North America. But these weren't gentle lands. Winters lasted for months. Winds roared like storms from the sea. And firewood, the only fuel they had, was precious and limited. In Iceland, forests disappeared within a single generation of settlement. That meant no timber, no endless firewood, and no easy way to heat a home. Every log had to be used wisely, not just for fire, but for structure, tools, even ships. In that environment, comfort wasn't a luxury, it was survival. So Viking builders developed something that didn't depend on constant fuel. They turned to the one thing that never ran out, the earth beneath their feet. The Viking home was never just on the ground, it was part of it. They learned to build with the land instead of fighting against it. These homes were long and narrow, often aligned east to west to follow the path of the sun. The walls weren't made of stone blocks or carved wood. They were made of turf, thick layers of living soil and grass cut from nearby fields. Each turf block held air pockets that trapped heat like modern insulation. Layer after layer created a barrier almost a meter thick, dense enough to resist the cold and flexible enough to move with the ground. When the wind howled, the turf walls didn't shake. They absorbed the pressure. When snow fell, it became an extra blanket of insulation. And because part of the house was buried, the earth itself acted like a thermal shell, keeping the interior stable year-round. It was the first natural climate control system, and it didn't need a single nail of metal or watt of power. Inside every Viking home was the heart of the structure, the hearth fire. It wasn't just for cooking. It was the heat source, the light source, and the emotional center of daily life. Here's the genius. When they lit the hearth, the heat didn't just warm the air. It radiated into the walls, the beams, and even the dirt floor. The entire building became a slow-release thermal battery. When the fire went out, the stored heat continued to flow back into the room, maintaining a steady, comfortable temperature through the long, frozen nights. This principle, which modern engineers call thermal mass, was something Viking builders understood through pure observation. They noticed how stones near the fire stayed warm even hours later. They built their walls to do the same. Simple materials, perfect logic, maximum survival value. But a warm house isn't enough. It has to breathe. If air doesn't circulate, smoke builds up, and oxygen drops. The Vikings solved this too. They carved roof vents directly above the central fire. When the smoke rose, it exited through a narrow vent at the top. Fresh air entered through small inlets near the ground. The result was a gentle convection cycle. Warm air stayed low, fresh air came in, and smoke drifted out, all without losing the precious heat. It was a perfectly balanced, self-ventilating system, the same idea modern architects now use in passive house design. Minimal energy, maximum efficiency. The Vikings didn't have equations, they had intuition. So if this design worked so well, why did it disappear? The answer isn't technical, it's cultural. As Viking society Christianized and kingdoms centralized, people started associating earth homes with poverty and paganism. The humble turf house was seen as the dwelling of farmers, not nobles. By the 12th century, new rulers preferred tall timber halls and stone manors, impressive to look at, but terrible at retaining heat. Architecture became a display of wealth, not wisdom. The manuals and builders of later centuries completely ignored the old ways, labeling them primitive. And so, the earth house, a 1,000-year-old survival innovation, was quietly erased from mainstream knowledge. Centuries later, as the world industrialized, people forgot that the ground could heat you instead of freezing you. Only in the 20th century did scientists start re-examining how these ancient homes worked. Modern eco-builders and off-grid designers began testing the same ideas, partially burying structures into slopes, using rammed earth and cob walls, and recreating natural ventilation systems without electricity. The results were astonishing. When researchers rebuilt turf houses in Iceland, they found the interiors stayed between 15 and 18 degrees Celsius all winter. Even when the outside air dropped below freezing, no insulation foam, no plastic vapor barriers, just earth, grass, and craftsmanship. What the Vikings called home, we now call sustainable architecture. It's ironic. We spend billions designing green buildings, but the Vikings were doing it centuries before we had the term. Their materials were renewable, their systems were circular, and their homes lasted generations with almost no maintenance. They didn't just build for comfort, they built for continuity. Each turf house was part of the landscape, returning to the soil when it finally crumbled. No waste, no pollution, no carbon footprint. Just balance, the kind modern sustainability keeps chasing. The earth-sheltered Viking home was more than architecture, it was philosophy carved into the ground. It proved that survival doesn't come from dominating nature, but understanding it. And maybe that's the greatest forgotten secret of all. Because the next time the world feels colder, whether in climate, technology, or culture, we might just rediscover that the smartest solutions are the ones buried right beneath our feet. If you enjoyed this deep dive into lost survival engineering, subscribe for more forgotten technologies that once shaped the world.